Do you know about Bianca Piper? If you've listened to the latest episode of the And Then They Were Gone podcast, you definitely do. And I want to take this opportunity to talk about coincidences and how I usually believe in them, but not really in this case. So Bianca was the 13-year-old girl who grew up in Foley, Missouri. She had intellectual disabilities as well as bipolar and ADHD, and she was prone to outbursts. So she had been seeing a therapist, and her therapist gave her mother some interesting advice. The therapist told Shannon, Bianca's mother, that if Bianca had an outburst, to drive her somewhere else, drop her off, have her walk back on her own. And that was supposed to remove them both from the situation and give Bianca a chance to cool down. So they tried it once, it worked, and then on March 10th, 2005, there was another outburst. It happened again, so Shannon tried to do it again. So she took Bianca a mile up the road, and they lived in kind of like a semi-rural area. Took her a mile up the road, dropped her off, gave her a flashlight because it was getting dark. It was like, okay, see you at home in a bit. But Bianca never came home. So there were searches. They thought she got lost, but there was no sign of her. Nobody saw her. They did checkpoints on the road. They went door to door talking to the neighbors. Nobody had ever seen her go. But we do know that she was in the home that day. Her father, who lived 2 hours away at the time, had spoken to her on the phone earlier that day. And her sister, her older sister, who also lived in the home, said that her last words to her were like, "Great, now I have to do your chores." Because this whole outburst that I mentioned started because Bianca didn't want to do the dishes after dinner. So according to her older sister, Tiffany, this is how everything happened. But fast forward several years later and things get weird. And this is where I'm starting to talk about coincidences. 7 years after Bianca went missing, her older sister Tiffany was arrested. And she was arrested for trafficking. She was arrested for trafficking high school girls. And what was uncovered during this entire process is that Tiffany was a victim herself. Several years before her arrest, she was the victim of trafficking. When investigators asked her who was the perpetrator behind this, she wouldn't tell them. So instead of taking that and thinking, maybe these two insane events that happened in one family 7 years apart could be possibly connected, the prosecutors just said, "Let it go," and didn't look into it any further. Now it's 2024 and Bianca has been missing for 19 years. So I know that there's so much more to this story. We did our episode on it, but I know that if you were living in or around Foley, at the time of Bianca's disappearance, I'm sure that there's a lot more local scuttlebutt that I missed. So if you know it, please let me know.